Command and Conquer revolutionized the real-time strategy genre and became one of the top-selling CD-ROMs of any type in 1995. A year later, Westwood released an expansion pack entitled the Covert Operations. In the grand scheme of what would come in the Command and Conquer franchise, the Covert Operations is a modest entry in the series, but at the time it gave players exactly what they wanted: more Command and Conquer content. In this installment of Hell March, we'll discuss the Covert Operations and sum up any final comments or issues concerning Command and Conquer Tiberian Dawn. Later expansion entries in the franchise add to the story and often contain FMV segments to introduce the missions. The Covert Operations is not that. The Covert Operations simply contains 15 extra missions, 7 for GDI and 8 for NOD, 10 new multiplayer maps, and extra audio tracks. Conceptually, these extra levels are missions that took place during and after the respective campaigns from the base game. While each commander was working across their assigned continent, these missions were being carried out on the side, possibly by a separate commander or in addition to the work done by the player character. The missions have no FMV introductions, but instead opt for simple text briefings like some of the Command and Conquer missions. As such, these missions can be played at any time and in any order. The missions include a whole range of types, such as preparing the way for future mission activity, mopping up the remainder of enemy forces after the official conclusion of the war, and recovering stolen war material. Among the GDI offerings are missions where a commando infiltrates a NOD base to cut the power to its obelisks of light, one of the coolest base defenses ever designed for a game. Attacks a group of NOD rebels attempting to rebuild the destroyed temple, recapture a base infiltrated by NOD, recover stolen research components, evacuate delegates from a targeted location, recapture a recon post, and clear a river of all NOD presence. Overall, the GDI missions are aimed at cleaning up the last vestiges of NOD and retaliating against any attempts to reestablish their dominance after Kane's death. I like these missions because they mirror how a movement like the Brotherhood of NOD would actually behave. Kane was a charismatic leader who led them to great success, but the movement doesn't fall apart and disappear just because he died. Though it would be 4 years later and a detour to the Cold War era, we see this continued idea in the opening stages of the direct sequel Tiberian Sun. Kane is dead, the head has been cut off, but the snake's body still thrashes around and causes damage. On the NOD side, it seems most of these missions took place during the war. Among the offerings are missions where a commander must secretly set up a base, make contact with a base cut off by GDI attack, hamper GDI popularity and influence in an area, destroy biocenters to hamper ion cannon research, recapture a stolen MCV, retake territory, overcome hopeless odds to repel GDI, and take out a GDI advanced communications center in order to sever the link to the ion cannon in Africa. This final mission takes place after the base game in a post-GDI victory world. GDI has taken control of Europe and is now turning its sights on rooting out NOD in Africa. This is our first indication that the GDI victory is canon, which will be substantiated in the sequel. In addition to the 15 new missions, the Covert Operations also brought many of the multiplayer-only units from the base game into the single-player campaign. This benefited NOD most of all. The first of the new single-player NOD units was a long-range missile unit akin to the GDI MRLS, called the Surface-to-Surface Missile Launcher, equipped with napalm-loaded rockets. It's an effective tool against infantry, though its slow reload rate makes supporting forces an absolute necessity. NOD also gets access to the Chem Warrior, a soldier in a special Tiberium-proof suit, meaning this is the only infantry unit that can traverse Tiberium fields without dying. Further, we see the first evidence of Kane's obsession with using Tiberium as a weapon in this Chem Warrior's gun, which spews a liquid Tiberium substance that produces a cloud of Tiberium gas. This gas cloud is deadly to all infantry. This unit fell out of use shortly after the First Tiberium War, but its legacy lives on in future installments. Finally, NOD gets to use its Apache attack helicopter in one of its missions, giving the faction an aerial assault unit. While not as effective as the GDI Orca craft, the ability to lay waste from above is still an invaluable aspect of any attack plan. Finally, the Covert Operations has a hidden 5-mission campaign in which the player is forced to fight against the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park. Obviously, this is intended to be a fun, non-canon campaign designed to capitalize on the popular movie at the time. Each mission is unique in starting base elements and available units, making each one a different experience. The Covert Operations is extremely limited by today's expansion pack standards. It's extremely limited compared to every other Command and Conquer entry's expansion options. However, for its time, the Covert Operations gave fans exactly what they wanted at the time: more Command & Conquer. It also showed Westwood that Command & Conquer was not just a drop in the bucket. There was still demand for the franchise, and Westwood would meet that demand 2 years later with the release of Red Alert, which really gets the franchise on its rise to popularity. As the franchise moves forward in what will eventually be known as the Tiberium timeline, the world continues to be ravaged by the alien substance. By the time the next game comes along, Tiberium has so wrecked the planet that humanity is barely hanging on to survival. In addition to the direct dangers of Tiberium, there's also the indications of some other threat from beyond the stars. We see some of these signs and hidden Easter eggs scattered throughout the game. A very rare creature called a Visceroid can pop up in only the rarest of circumstances in Command & Conquer. This animal, if you can call it that, is a mutated mass of flesh that was once some other kind of animal, or even a human who, when infected with Tiberium, didn't die, but morphed into some other horrifying thing. As the franchise moves forward, we will continue to see the proliferation of these Tiberium mutations as well as even more complex creatures. Finally, on certain maps in the main game, there is an odd sprite that can be found. While there is never a concrete explanation given for this oddity, many have speculated this is a crashed alien spacecraft. That's right, Command & Conquer is a franchise with aliens. Dr. Mobius actually implies something to this effect in his interview concerning Tiberium. The substance is altering Earth to fit its alien nature. What if the meteor that brought Tiberium to Earth didn't arrive by accident? What if it was sent by someone? Those questions will have to wait until later installments, but it's something to consider for now. Command & Conquer Renegade, a first-person shooter taking place during the first game, the player character happens upon a UFO in a Nod temple, substantiating the idea that aliens were visiting the planet around the First Tiberium War. We see more evidence of alien presence in later games as well. Command & Conquer has all the hallmarks of a low-budget video game from the 90s. Game designers and production staff doubling as actors, structural issues that were corrected in later installments, and ideas that were not able to be fleshed out fully. Despite all that, Command & Conquer captured the attention of millions and allowed Westwood to become a successful studio for over a decade before being purchased by EA Games, which we'll discuss in future installments. As we move forward in future Hell Marches, we can track how the games expand in both unit options and faction numbers. Westwood also worked on improving the faction unit balance over installments as the franchise progressed, making the game experience more equitable and allowing more room for strategy over simple unit advantage. Eventually, the game would introduce more varying aerial units, entire naval divisions, and a wide range of new superweapons. This concludes this year's Hell March. I love the Command & Conquer series and look forward to covering more of these games in the future. I know most fans of this franchise prefer the later games in the series, like Red Alert 2 and Generals, and for good reason, but there is something absolutely charming about this little game from 30 years ago. If you haven't played this game or the expansion pack and don't mind playing dated games, I highly recommend checking this one out. If you're familiar with Command & Conquer series, let me know your favorite era from the franchise. Thank you for watching.